On the golden throne, the Minister of War's illegitimate daughter Jiang wanting knelt on the ground with eyes like willow blossoms in the rain. Your Majesty, please vindicate your servant. Last night General Xie assaulted me in the rear garden and ruined my chastity. My crown prince brother, who had been beguiled by her, immediately stepped forward. Father, Xieside's conduct is tarnished and he is unfit to be a general. Demote him and investigate, and have him marry wanting to preserve her honor. All the officials in the court pointed fingers at me. I stood in the hall, watching this farce, and suddenly laughed. To the astonished gazes of everyone, I undid the frog closures, took off the heavy general's robe, and revealed the tightly bound chest wrap that had been worn for so long. A cascade of black hair fell like a waterfall. Your Majesty, I, a female subject disguised as a man guarding the frontier for 10 years, do not know where this accusation of sullied chastity comes from. On the golden throne hall, deathly silence, you could hear a pin drop. The tear tracks on Jiang Wanting's face hadn't yet dried, her mouth was frozen in a ridiculous shape, and the smugness and scheming in her eyes solidified into a blank void. My dear elder brother, Crown Prince Xie Zhao, had his hand pointing at me stuck mid-air, his flushed face draining to chalk-white in an instant. You, he stammered you for a long time, unable to string together a complete sentence. I stood barefoot on the cold gilt bricks, letting my loosened black hair fall down to my waist. The heavy dark general's robe on my body was casually tossed to the ground by me. As if throwing away a piece of trash, I lifted my eyes, my gaze sweeping over the astonished, shocked faces of the court officials, and finally resting on the emperor seated high on the dragon throne, who also wore a look of surprise. Your Majesty, my voice was clear and resonant. I, Xie, of the main line of the General of the Guard of the nation's household, for the sake of carrying on my ancestors' will, and to protect the family and state, have presented myself as a man since the age of 10, enlisted in the Northern Army at 16. It has been 10 years. I have taken 3,000 enemy heads and reclaimed 800 li of lost land. May I ask Your Majesty, and all the officials present over these 10 years, have I been even half a degree unworthy of the great Li, unworthy of the spirit of the Xie army? No one answered. Only heavy breathing echoed through the hall. My father, Xie Yuan, the great general who guards the realm, gave his life for the country. So did my grandfather. The Xie family is a house of unwavering loyalty. With only one heir in each of 3 generations, it has come down to me, and I am a daughter, to preserve the Xie family's military command and keep our political enemies, who were eyeing us like tigers, from splitting up and devouring the Xie army. My mother and my father, who was only a minor official at the time, made a momentous decision. They proclaimed to the outside world that the child was a son. I was raised as a boy from an early age, trained in martial arts, taught the art of war, my chest always bound tight with thick wrappings. In summer, heat rash would break out all over me, the pain and itch unbearable. Yet I could not speak of it to anyone. I have never thought women inferior, but I know that in this world, there is no place for a woman general, so I endured. I thought that as long as my military achievements were illustrious, as long as I could hold the gates of Dali, one day I could openly and honorably take off this disguise, but I didn't expect that day to come in such a degrading way. Xie, Crown Prince Xie Zhao finally found his voice. His face was ashen, his tone full of incredulous fury. You, how dare you deceive the sovereign and betray your lord? What nerve you have! I sneered and looked at him. Crown Prince, to accuse me of deceiving the sovereign is a hat I refuse to wear. What about Jiang Wanting, who disguised herself as a man and falsely accused a first-rank general of the court? You turn a blind eye and favor a mysterious concubine-born girl, seeking to seize my military command and ruin the Xie family's century-old good name. How is that any different? The Crown Prince was left speechless by my retort. He looked at Jiang Wanting, his eyes full of disappointment and the anger of one who has been betrayed. Jiang Wanting trembled all over, as if waking from a dream, and crawled madly toward the dragon throne. No, Your Majesty, it's not like that. It was her. She deceived me. Last night she clearly ed for half the day, yet still couldn't fabricate how one woman could forcefully violate another woman. Enough. On the dragon throne, the emperor who had been silent at last spoke, his voice carrying a suppressed thunderous fury. Guards, seize this slanderous criminal woman, Jiang Wanting, who spouts nonsense and frames the loyal and upright, and throw her into the heavenly prison. She will await my judgment. At once, the Jinwu guard stepped forward and dragged away Jiang Wanting. Limp as mud, she was still screaming, "Spare me, Your Majesty, Your Highness the Crown Prince. Save me, Third Prince, Third Prince. Save me." At the words Third Prince, Xie Qi, the third prince who had been standing among the military officers watching the spectacle, showed a slight change in expression. I caught that momentary shift. The real show is only just beginning. Too. Jiang Wanting was dragged away, and the hall returned to a temporary calm. Every gaze was fixed on me. There was curiosity, scrutiny, disdain, and also a faint, indescribable thrill. The youngest god of war of the great Li dynasty, the little general, turned out to be a woman. This news was enough to set the entire capital abuzz for 3 days and 3 nights. Crown Prince Xie Zhao's face was ashen to the extreme. He lowered his head, not daring to look at me or at his majesty. "Father, your son misjudged people and nearly wronged General Xie. I beg your majesty to punish me." The emperor gave him a cold glance, as the heir apparent, to be deceived by a mere lowly maiden and, without verifying the facts, move against a pillar of the state. "Xie Zhao, you have greatly disappointed me." Xie Zhao slunk away, pausing as he passed by me. His lips moved slightly, as if he had something to say. I couldn't be bothered to give him even a glance. Crown Prince brother, from the moment he, for Jiang Wanting, without asking for reasons, was prepared to have me put to death, that ridiculous, I once thought unbreakable sibling bond between us shattered. Since I was young I've felt I deserved all that is good, including the trust and protection of my relatives. Those who cannot give me these do not deserve to be my kin. The atmosphere in the hall remained heavy. The crime of deceiving the emperor can be minor or severe. At its least it can be seen as compelled by circumstance. Excusable, at its worst it is contempt for imperial authority, punishable by extermination of 9 generations. Everyone waited to see how the emperor would deal with me. I stood there calmly, wearing only a thin inner garment and a faded chest wrap. The frost and wind of the northern borders had left countless tiny scars on my body, old wounds layered atop new ones, honors I had bought with my life. The emperor's gaze lingered on me for a long time, long enough that I thought he was about to pronounce my sentence. Instead he suddenly sighed. "Xie, put your clothes on, don't catch cold." The old eunuch at the side immediately brought my official robe forward. I didn't move. "Your Majesty." I revealed my identity today not merely to clear my name. I lifted my head, my gaze passing over everyone to fix squarely on Third Prince Xie Qi. "I have one more matter to report." Xie Qi's heart jolted. He clutched his fists instinctively. I spoke slowly, each word crystal clear. "I accuse Third Prince Xie Qi of colluding with foreign enemies and plotting rebellion." A stone sent ripples 1,000 layers deep. The entire Golden Dragon Hall exploded into chaos. If revealing my being a woman was a thunderclap from a clear sky, this accusation was as if heaven and earth had collapsed. 3. "Xie, you slander me with your mouth." Third Prince Xie Qi almost jumped up instantly, his handsome face twisted with anger. "You yourself committed the crime of deceiving the sovereign, and now you want to drag this prince down with you. How poisonous your heart is." He turned to the emperor and knelt with a thud. "Father, judge with clarity. Your son has been loyal to you, as clear as the sun and moon. Xie is taking revenge for personal reasons. She is jealous of my closeness with Wanting, so she fabricated this horrendous lie." He performed with sobs and tears, inheriting a bit of Jiang Wanting's true style. Unfortunately, in front of me, it was merely showing off before an expert. I watched his act coldly. "Your Highness the Third Prince, Jiang Wanting and I have never met, so how could there be any jealousy? As for you, why were you so quick to distance yourself when she encountered trouble? And to say she was punished by me because of you, isn't that an inadvertent confession that you and she were in cahoots?" Xie Qi's face stiffened. Only then did he realize he'd misspoken in his haste. Several senior ministers in the court already wore thoughtful expressions. The Emperor sat on the dragon throne, expressionless, betraying no emotion. Xie, you say Xie Qi plotted rebellion, do you have evidence? Yes, I took from my bosom a letter wrapped in layers of oil paper and presented it. Your Majesty, this is a handwritten letter from the third prince to the Khan of the Northern Di. In it he promises that if the Northern Di dispatch troops to feint an attack on Yulin Pass, he will coordinate within the capital to force your abdication. Once achieved, he will hand over the 16 Yangyun prefectures. At these words the whole court was stunned. The 16 Yangyun prefectures are the northern gate of the Dali dynasty, a bulwark the Xie family had held for 3 generations with the blood of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. He, Xie Qi, would give it to foreigners for the throne. Utter nonsense. Xie Qi raged like a madman. Forging a letter counts as evidence. Father, you can't believe her on a whim. The emperor ignored him and simply opened the letter. The more he read, the darker his expression grew. Finally, he hurled the paper at Xie Qi's face. Bastard, look at it yourself. Isn't that seal the dragon-patterned jade seal you secretly carved? Xie Qi picked up the paper, glanced at it, and was struck as if by lightning, collapsing to the ground. That seal was his birth mother's heirloom. He cherished it like a treasure, and only a few close confidants knew of it. He couldn't fathom how the letter could have fallen into Xie Qi's hands. He didn't know that I not only fight wars but am also well versed in political schemes. I had long ago, through spies planted in his residence, uncovered their entire plan. Jiang wanting was a pawn he pushed forward from the start to deal with me. He wanted Jiang wanting to marry into the general's household and act as his inside agent, gradually eroding the Xie family's military power. He thought I was merely a simple-minded warrior and that his plot was flawless. How laughable. I turned the tables, deliberately walking into their trap for the sake of today, to stand in the imperial hall and, before the full court of civil and military officials, strip his mask layer by layer until it was completely torn away. For, Father, I am innocent. This is a frame-up. She framed me. Xie Qi still made a final struggle, like a mad dog snapping at me. It was her. She must have stolen my seal and forged this letter. She hates me. She has long wanted to get rid of me. I watched him quietly, my expression unreadable. Third prince, and you still do not repent. Do you think the only evidence is this one letter? My voice was low, but the color drained from Xie Qi's face at once. Turning to the emperor, I bowed deeply. Your Majesty, during my 10 years at the northern border, besides resisting foreign enemies, I have also secretly done one thing for you, investigated the third prince and his faction for colluding with foreigners, trafficking arms, and plotting rebellion, and compiled the chain of evidence. Now both witnesses and physical evidence are present. The witnesses have been secretly escorted back to the capital by me and are waiting outside the palace. As for the physical evidence, I produced from the inner layer of my official robe a thick bundle of account books and letters. Your Highness the Third Prince, do you recognize these? Those ledgers recorded in detail how he used secret trade routes to sell the court's arms to the Beidi in exchange for gold and silver and to keep a private army. Those letters were secret correspondence between him and high ministers, plotting how to sideline the crown prince and how to force a palace takeover. Each and every item, shocking to behold. Xie Qi looked utterly broken as he stared at these things, muttering, "No, no." With a vacant expression, the emperor trembled with anger, stepped down from the dragon throne and kicked him to the ground. Treachery, you traitor, I have never treated you unfairly. Why would you commit such a heinous, unfilial crime? Xie Qi lay on the ground, suddenly laughing maniacally. Treated me unfairly? Ha ha ha. Father, you only ever cared about the crown prince. Only Xie Jiao, my mother, the consort, died early. When did you ever spare me a glance? I am also your son. Why was he born the crown prince and I am only a spare prince? And her, a woman, why should she command the troops, be in theft and promoted? I, a prince, must bow and scrape before her. This world is unfair. I looked at his contorted face, a chill settling in my heart. So his hatred was not only for the crown prince but for me as well. Simply because I was a woman yet stood higher than him. Pathetic and ridiculous. Shut his mouth, the emperor roared. Issue my decree. Third Prince Xiechida's conduct is corrupt and he has plotted rebellion and defied his sovereign. He is hereby stripped of princely rank and reduced to commoner status. Confined for life to the ancestral household prison, his cohorts will be tried jointly by the Court of Judicial Review and the Ministry of Punishments and punished severely without mercy. The guards lunged forward like wolves and tigers, stuffing rags into Xieqi's mouth and dragging him away. A deathly silence fell over the golden audience hall. The storm had finally subsided. I stood barefoot in the center of the hall, and everyone's gaze focused on me once more. This time there was no longer scorn in their eyes, only awe and curiosity. The emperor returned to the dragon throne and sat down wearily, looking at me with a complicated expression. Xie, you disguised yourself as a man and deceived the court. This is a grave crime. Yet you exposed a traitor and saved the state. Can your merits and faults offset each other? He seemed to be asking me, and also asking himself. I said nothing and knelt quietly. Your subject submits to your Majesty's judgment. 5. The emperor was silent for a long time, and the entire hall fell silent with him. The atmosphere was so oppressive it was hard to breathe. Just when I thought he was going to sentence me to death, he sighed deeply. Rise. There was a weariness and guilt in his voice I had never heard before. The Xie family is loyal and heroic through the generations, and in your generation, I have allowed you to suffer so many wrongs. If not for the necessities of the times, why would a daughter like you have to go on the battlefield to kill enemies and shoulder such a heavy burden? My heart stirred, and I lifted my head to find the emperor's gaze was unexpectedly gentle. Xie, do you know why your father dressed you as a boy back then? I shook my head. I only knew it was to preserve the Xie family's military authority. The emperor's gaze grew distant. Your father Xie Yuan was not only my general, but also my confidant. In those days he saw that Xieqi was ambitious, had already planted forces within the army, and harbored unruly intentions, while the crown prince was benevolent, yet weak, not a match for Xieqi. The Xie family's army is the foundation of our Dali. It must never fall into the hands of someone like Xieqi, a wolfish and ambitious man. So your father and I set a plan. The emperor looked at me and said, word by word, to make you into my sharpest blade. A blade hidden in the dark, meant specifically to deal with Xieqi. I felt as if struck by lightning. So, my disguising myself as a man to guard the border was never just for the Xie family. It was also a scheme laid by the emperor and my father, spanning 10 years from beginning to end. I was the emperor's secret weapon. It's true that I'm guarding the frontier and defending the homeland. It's also true that I'm secretly investigating the Third Prince's faction for the emperor and gathering evidence of his treason. No wonder every time I submit a secret memorial about Xieqi, I can always receive the emperor's covert support. No wonder that after I made such a huge mess in court today, he's been slow to mete out punishment. Everything finally has an answer. I gaze at the sovereign on the dragon throne, my heart a tangle of emotions. So all the suffering I endured had his shadow behind it. He used me, and he made me who I am. These 10 years have been hard on you. There was a barely perceptible tremor in the emperor's voice. I have failed you, and I have failed Xie Yuan. I lowered my head, and at last the tears burst from my eyes, not for the sake of grievance, but for my father, who had long since fallen on the battlefield. Father, do you see this? Your daughter has not brought shame upon you. I have fulfilled your unfinished wish, Your Majesty. I wiped away my tears and straightened up again. Your subject does not suffer. It is an honor for Xie to share Your Majesty's burdens and be loyal to the great Li. The emperor looked at me, his eyes full of admiration. Good, what an excellent speech of thanks. Truly the daughter of Xie Yuan. He rose to his feet, his voice resounding through the entire Golden Throne Hall. Convey our decree. Although Xie did deceive the emperor, her motives are pitiable and her heart commendable. Moreover, she exposed the traitors and served the country. Her merits outweigh her faults, and no further investigation will be pursued. From this day forth, Xie's status as a woman is restored. I hereby bestow upon Xie the title of National Protector Female General. She will receive the salary of a first-rank official and her status will be above all princesses. A mansion will be granted to her, 10,000 taels of gold, and 1,000 bolts of brocade. Furthermore, the Xie family army shall continue to be commanded by National Protector Female General Xie. No one shall object. As soon as the decree was issued, the entire court was in an uproar. A female general who protects the nation. Since the founding of the Great Li dynasty, no woman has ever received such an honor. Her status even surpasses that of a princess. What an honor this is! I knelt on the ground and bowed deeply. Your servant offers his thanks and takes his leave. Thank you for your Majesty's boundless grace. Long live the Emperor, long live, long live. At this moment, I could finally cast off the heavy disguise and stand beneath the sunlight as my true self. I, Xie, am no longer the young General Xie. I am the first and only female general protector of the Great Li dynasty. 6. News travels faster than the wind. Before the imperial edict appointing me as general protector had even reached the general's residence, the entire capital already knew the god of war, young General Xie, is a woman. Not only did the emperor refrain from punishing me, he even granted me special rewards for a time. In tea houses and taverns, on every street corner and alleyway, all anyone could talk about was my name. There was astonishment, admiration, and of course, jealousy and disdain. How can a woman be a general, exposing herself in public? What propriety is that? Exactly. Who would dare marry her after that? I think the emperor just had a moment of confusion. Give it a few days and he'll definitely rescind the decree. I couldn't care less about these rumors. I don't need to marry anyone. I'm a powerhouse in my own right. As for the emperor's decision, I know better than anyone that it wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. It was the optimal choice he made after weighing the pros and cons. With Xie toppled and the crown prince confined, the balance of power at court needs to be reshuffled, and with the Xie family army in my hand and unwavering loyalty to him, I am the sharpest blade, both the most useful and the most trustworthy. His rewards to me are both appeasement and enticement. Such is the craft of emperors, nothing more. I returned to the general's manor, greeted by kneeling from everyone in the household. Welcome home, General. Only this time, there was a hint of complexity in their eyes. I walked straight to the ancestral hall in the rear courtyard. My mother's memorial tablet is enshrined there. She passed away in melancholy when I was 15. Before she died, she held my hand and repeatedly urged me to be careful, to protect myself, and to protect the Xie family. I knelt on the prayer cushion and bowed 3 times to the memorial tablet. Mother, your daughter has done it. From now on, your daughter can openly wear women's clothes when offering incense to you. A rush of hurried footsteps came from outside the ancestral hall. It was the crown prince, Xie Jiao. He was grounded, but clearly still found a way to sneak out. He stood at the door, looking at my figure in women's clothing, his expression complicated. RCI, he called me by my nickname, his voice hoarse. I didn't look back. Your Highness the Crown Prince, there's nothing left for us to say. No, Aki, listen to me explain. He stepped in urgently. At that time, I was deceived by Jiang wanting. I didn't know what kind of person she was, and I certainly didn't know you were, didn't know I was a woman. I finally turned back, looking at him coldly. So, if I had been a man, you could act without asking questions, and for the sake of a woman, destroy me, destroy the Xie family. Is that it? That's not what I meant. He waved his hand in a panic. I just thought a woman's chastity is more important than anything. So then, my reputation, the Xie family's century-old honor, doesn't matter. I stepped closer to him, my gaze sharp as a blade. Xie Jiao, we grew up together. You called me Aki, and I called you Crown Prince brother. I once believed we were the closest people in the world. I once believed that no matter what happened, you would trust me. But I was wrong. In your heart, a woman you've known for less than 3 months actually matters more than me, your brother who's been by your side for nearly 20 years. You make me feel sick. My words were like knives, plunging deep into his heart. His face was deathly pale, his lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. Aki, I'm sorry. No need. I cut him off. From this day on, you are the Crown Prince, and I am your subject. There is a line between ruler and minister. Your Highness, please go back. I turned away and looked at him no more. I don't need a big brother who would betray me so easily. He stood behind me for a long time, then left desolately with a heavy sigh. I listened to his footsteps fade away. Without the slightest ripple in my heart, noble by birth, I never waste even a shred of emotion on people or things that aren't worth it. 7. The dungeon was dark and damp, Jiang wanting curled up in the pile of straw in the corner. The gorgeous dress she wore had long been torn to shreds and was smeared with filth. Her hair hung in a wild tangle, her eyes vacant, like a puppet that had lost its soul. Time to eat. The jailer hurled a bowl of spoiled food heavily to the ground, making a piercing noise. Jiang wanting showed no reaction. The jailer impatiently kicked her with his foot. Did you hear me? Stop playing dead. Just then, a burst of footsteps sounded outside the cell. The jailer looked back and was scared out of his wits, hurriedly dropping to his knees. Pay respects to the Protectress General, clad in scarlet palace attire with a white fox fur cloak draped over it. I walked forward slowly amid a crowd of guards, utterly out of place in this filthy, foul-smelling imperial prison. Stand up. I spoke calmly, my gaze falling on Jiang Wanting. Hearing my voice, Jiang Wanting's body suddenly trembled. She slowly lifted her head, and at last a glimmer of light appeared in her clouded eyes, light that was carved deep hatred. Thank you, she screamed and lunged forward, but the cell door blocked her firmly. She shook the bars frantically, her nails screeching against the iron. You bitch! Why won't you die? Why did you come here? I quietly watched her go mad, a cold smile tugging at the corner of my lips. Of course. I'm here to bring you good news. I paused, savoring her eager yet venomous expression, then spoke unhurriedly. His Majesty has issued a decree, appointing me as the Protectress General of the realm, with a rank above that of a princess. Oh, right. He also bestowed a new general's residence, right on Vermilion Bird Avenue, the one closest to the Imperial Palace. I heard it was originally prepared as a marital secondary residence for the third prince. Jiang Wanting's eyes widened instantly. Protectorate Lady General, a rank higher than a princess. That mansion she dreamed of living in, all of this should have been hers if she had successfully married me. She would have been the general's wife, and when the third prince ascended the throne, she'd be part of the imperial clan. But now, it's all over. She not only got nothing, she became a prisoner, and Cci, the martial man she despised most, whom she thought she could manipulate at will, rose to the top in a single bound and obtained everything she had dreamed of. No, impossible, she murmured, unable to accept the truth. There's more. I continued to smile, rubbing salt in her wound. The third prince has been reduced to commoner status and confined for life in the clan office. His followers have all been thrown into the great prison. Your grand dreams should be over. As for you, Jiang Wanting, my voice grew cold. Framing a court official and attempting to shake the foundations of the state is a capital offense. However, His Majesty is merciful. Considering you were used by others, your crime does not warrant death. Jiang Wanting swallowed and a trace of hope flared in her eyes. Your Majesty, will you spare me? Yes, I nodded, smiling ever more brightly. His Majesty has decreed that you be sent to the military, to serve as a camp prostitute. What do you think? Does this count as fulfilling your wish to marry into the army? 8. Jiang Wanting let out a heart-rending scream. Courtesan, what kind of place is that? That's a hell more terrifying than death. She's a pampered concubine-born daughter. How could she endure that kind of torment? Cci, you vicious, venomous heart. Her eyes were about to split with rage, as if she wanted to burst out of the cell and tear me to pieces. Me vicious. The smile on my face disappeared in an instant, replaced by a coldness. Jiang Wanting, when you schemed to frame me, trying to ruin my reputation and drag the Xie family into endless calamity, why didn't you call yourself vicious? When you and Xie Qi conspired to sell out the country in exchange for wealth and glory, why didn't you call yourself vicious? If you want to climb over my corpse, be prepared to be pulled down from the clouds by me and stamped hard into the mud. I was born with noble bones. From a young age I believed I deserved the very best, and I would never allow any petty person to trample on my head. You are not worthy. I left those words behind, turned and walked away, never looking at her again. Behind me were her desperate, frantic curses and cries. I knew she was finished. Jealousy and refusal to accept it would gnaw at her heart like a viper day and night. until she went completely mad or met a miserable end in endless humiliation. This is the price she should pay. Walking out of the heavenly prison, the blinding sunlight fell on me. I took a deep breath, and the pent-up gloom in my chest was swept away. When I returned to the new general's manor, the butler was already waiting at the gate with all the servants. "Welcome, General." I nodded and walked into the imposing residence. As soon as I entered, I saw an unexpected person. My father, no, to be precise, the man who was my father in name only, now Vice Minister of War Zhu Wenqing. Back then, when my mother was pregnant with me, my father Xie Yuan was fighting at the frontier. To cover things up, my mother publicly claimed she had had an affair with Zhu Wenqing, who was then a low-ranking clerk under her, and that the child was his. In a fit of rage, Xie Yuan divorced her, and she married me off to Zhu Wenqing. Because of that, Zhu Wenqing rose swiftly through the ranks and became an important pawn the Xie family planted in the imperial court. He treats me like his own child. At this moment, he looks at me, his eyes rimmed with red. "Aki, father," I call to him softly. He couldn't hold back any longer, tears streaming down his aged face. "Good, good. Father can finally see you wearing a daughter's clothes. These years have been hard on you." I shook my head and steadied him. "Father, it's not hard, everything is fine now." "Yes, everything is fine now. The third prince has fallen, the crown prince has lost power, and the two greatest threats in court have been eliminated. I hold military command and bear the emperor's favor. No one dares to move against me lightly anymore. I can finally live for myself." 9. The emperor acted quickly. After the faction of the third prince was uprooted, many positions at court opened up. He did not rush to fill them, but issued an imperial edict that took everyone by surprise, opening the civil examinations to women, allowing women across the realm to take the exams and enter government service. This edict caused an even greater uproar than when I was granted the title of Protector General. Since ancient times, it has been said that a woman's virtue lies in her lack of talent. Now the emperor actually intends for women to compete with men for degrees and govern the country. It's sheer absurdity. For a time, voices of opposition rose throughout the court and country. Countless civil officials submitted memorials, bitterly arguing that this measure violated ancestral decrees, undermined the foundation of the state, and was a harbinger of yin and yang turned upside down and great chaos in the realm. Even the crown prince Xie Zhao, who had his confinement lifted, stood up to oppose it. "Father Emperor, your son believes that women should manage the household and men the public affairs. This is the natural order and human relations. If women may all become officials, would that not throw the moral principles into disorder?" The emperor sat on the dragon throne, his face as, not looking at the indignant ministers, but turning his gaze to me. "National Guard girl general, what do you think?" Everyone's eyes instantly focused on me again. I was dressed in red military attire, standing at the head of the generals with a dashing, valiant air. I stepped forward and bowed to the emperor. "Your Majesty, in my humble opinion, this is an excellent course of action." Wow! An uproar erupted in the grand hall. An old minister was so furious that his beard was trembling. "General Xie, you are a woman too. How could you utter such treasonous words?" I looked at him, my gaze steady. "Lord Wang, let me ask you, as a woman who has guarded the northern frontier for 10 years, have I ever allowed the northern DI to set even half a step into our great Li?" Lord Wang choked on his words. This is a different matter." "What's the difference?" I pressed on step by step. "Just because I'm a woman, does that mean the merits I earned are to be erased? Just because I'm a woman, am I unworthy to stand on this court?" His Majesty opened the women's imperial examination to give the women of the realm an opportunity, a chance to prove they are no worse than men. Heroes are not judged by their origins. How should talent be divided by gender? Those with ability should serve the state, not have their lives buried because of their sex. If you esteemed sirs feel that your learning can't even surpass that of a group of women, then CSCI has nothing more to say. My words landed with a resounding thud, deafening and stirring. The civil officials who had just been delivering impassioned speeches all flushed scarlet and were struck dumb. Indeed, priding themselves on being well-read and full of statecraft, if they can't even outscore a group of women, what face have they to stand in this court? The Crown Prince Xie Zhao opened his mouth, but in the end swallowed his words. He looked at me with complicated eyes. He suddenly realized that he had never truly known me. Once, I was the silent, taciturn younger brother behind him who only knew how to wield a blade. Now, I stand on the court, sparring verbally with the scholars, radiant, a national female general protecting the state. He suddenly felt ridiculous. The emperor watched this dramatic scene with a smile in his eyes. This was exactly the effect he wanted. He intended to use my sharpest sword to cleave open that rotting old system. Enough, he delivered the final word. This matter need not be discussed further. My will is decided. Imperial Astronomical Office. Choose an auspicious day. Open the women's. Dismiss. I stood where I was, watching the civil officials leave one by one with their heads bowed and spirits broken. I knew this was only the beginning. The road ahead was still long. But I was not afraid, because I was not fighting alone. Behind me stood thousands upon thousands of women eager to change their destinies, and I would be the sharpest sword in their hands. 10 The news of the women's fell like a stone thrown into a lake, stirring up a huge ripple across the whole Dali era. At first, there was nothing but doubt and ridicule. A woman taking the imperial examinations. What a colossal joke. Read a few volumes of Nuji and you think you can be an official. Don't make a fool of yourself. Only a handful responded, I'm not in a hurry. I know changing mindsets takes time. The first thing I did was petition the emperor to open an official girls' school admitting commoner girls for free. Taught by female instructors, I personally selected to teach them reading, literacy, arithmetic, and rhetoric. The emperor approved. On the first day the girls' school opened. It was deserted. On the second day I did something. I replaced all the managers of my cosmetics shops, dressmakers, and jewelry houses with students selected from the girls' school who showed talent for arithmetic, and I promised that if they performed well they would receive year-end bonuses 10% higher than the male managers. As soon as the news broke, the women across the capital erupted. Who said women could only stay at home to support their husbands and raise children? It turned out that being educated and literate could really earn money, and even serve as head shopkeeper. For a time, the doors to girls' schools were almost trampled down. Countless parents jostled to send their daughters in. Seeing the girls in the school with bright eyes, loudly reciting the rise and fall of the nation is every man's responsibility, I seemed to see countless versions of my former self. Bound, suppressed, yet still yearning to break the shackles and embrace the sky. The Crown Prince Xie Zhao came to see me several times. He no longer called me Aki, but respectfully addressed me as General Xie. He watched me handle military affairs and organize the girls' school, saw me argue reasonably with those ministers who had once kowtowed to him, and the confusion in his eyes gradually turned into admiration. General Xie, I was wrong before. After one council meeting, he stopped me. His expression sincere. I always thought women were fragile and should be sheltered under a protective wing. But I forgot that you can also battle through the skies and soar among the heavens. I looked at him, my expression calm. It is fortunate for the women of the realm that your highness understands this truth. He gave a bitter laugh. Father is right. I have disappointed you. I am unworthy to be your brother. Let the past be past, I said lightly. One must always look forward. I did not forgive him. Some wounds, once inflicted, can never be healed, but I no longer hated him. For my world had grown broader, and my gaze had long since moved beyond these personal grievances to distant horizons. I saw that although the first cohort of women who passed the ENC exam was small in number, they were like seeds scattered to every corner of Dali. Some became county magistrates' aides, some joined the Ministry of Revenue as clerks, and some were even sent to remote regions to implement reforms. Through their actions they proved to the world that women could also serve the country and the people. Shouldering half the sky, I saw more and more girls leaving their inner chambers and courtyards, entering classrooms, and stepping into society. Their faces shone with confidence and hope. This is the future I long for. 11. 3 years later, the Northern DI invaded again, their forces at the city gates. This time they came with terrifying momentum, mustering 300,000 troops and threatening to crush Yulin Pass and march straight on the capital. The court and the country were shaken. The pro-war and pro-peace factions clashed without end. The peacemakers argued that the enemy was strong and we were weak, and it would be better to cede territory and pay indemnities in exchange for temporary peace, led by none other than Lord Wang, who had once denounced me as a great traitor. Your Majesty, the Northern DI are treacherous and ambitious, their edge is unstoppable. Our forces have marched long and are short of supplies. If we rashly go to war, we will surely be defeated. The Emperor sat on the dragon throne, his face ashen, his gaze turning to me. General protecting the nation, what is your opinion? I wore my battle dress, my hand on my sword, and stepped forward. Your Majesty, I request to fight. The 4 short words rang out with force. Minister Wang hurriedly cried, General Xie, you're going to throw our Dali soldiers into the fire pit. I stared at him coolly. Minister Wang, I only ask you one question. Do you know what the martial spirit of my Xie family army is? He froze. What is it? It is not an inch of land to give up. The lands my Xie family protected for 3 generations, the hundreds of thousands of soldiers, guarded with blood and lives, there is not an inch to yield. The Beidi want it. Fine, let them trade for it with their lives. My voice echoed through the Golden Throne Hall. All the pro-war commanders stepped forward in unison, dropping to one knee. We concur. We beg your Majesty to permit General Xie to take command and march out. The momentum was enormous, the force of it piercing the heavens. Lord Wang and the other pro-peace officials went pale, no longer daring to speak. The Emperor looked at me, his eyes full of trust. Approved. I appoint you Grand Marshal of the Northern Campaign, to command the 3 armies and march at once. I will warm wine for you in the capital and await your triumphant return. Your servant receives the edict. I took the marshal's seal, turned, and strode out of the Golden Throne Hall. Behind me a roar like mountains and seas. Long live the general. I knew this battle would be another turning point in my life. If I won, I would be completely deified, becoming an unshakable legend of the Dali dynasty. If I lost, I would be ruined and damned forever. Yet I felt no fear, because I was born of noble bone, firmly believing I deserved the highest glory in the world. I, CSEI, was born for war. 12 On the day the army set off, the capital was empty of people in every lane and alley as 10,000 citizens filled the streets to see us off. I sat astride my horse, silver armor gleaming in the sunlight. In the crowd I saw many familiar faces, teachers and students from the Women's Academy, the female shopkeeper from my stall, the women who had just entered official service. Their eyes were full of reverence and hope, silently telling me. They stood with me. My eyes searched through the crowd and finally settled on an inconspicuous corner. Crown Prince Xie Zhao stood in plain clothes, quietly there without attendants or guards, like the most ordinary of civilians. Our eyes met. He nodded heavily, his gaze carrying apology, blessing, and above all a kind of entrustment. I understood his meaning. With him in the capital, I could go to war with peace of mind. I withdrew my gaze, my heart calm. Perhaps I could never truly forgive his past betrayal, but in this moment, we were sovereign and subject, the last 2 bulwarks defending the nation. That was enough. Advance. I drew my sword and pointed north. The bugles sounded, the troops swept forward with soaring morale, and the battle hymn rang out. Wind, wind, great wind, we are the blade of the Dali, the steadfast shield of the people, and with the enemy's blood we will defend our honor. That battle lasted a full 6 months and was extraordinarily brutal. I led from the front and was wounded several times. The worst wound left an arrow a mere inch from my heart, but I did not retreat. I told the soldiers, behind us is the capital, our homeland, we cannot fall back. The hardest moments were sustained by the steady flow of provisions and reinforcements from the capital. I knew it was Xie Zhao who bore all the pressure and cleared every worry from my rear. Finally, on that winter day when snow fell thickly, the decisive battle came. I personally led 3,000 iron cavalry around to the enemy's rear and launched a surprise attack on the northern Di King's Court. That night, flames leapt to the sky and the sounds of killing shook the plains. With my own hand I cut off the northern Di Khan's head. The northern Di army, leaderless, fell into rout. Dali had won. When I returned to the capital with the news of victory and the Khan's head, the emperor himself, with civil and military officials, rode out 30 li to meet me. He stepped down from the imperial dragon carriage and personally helped me dismount, seeing the scars and the wear of the journey all over me. His tiger eyes filled with tears. "General, you've worked hard." I dropped to one knee and raised that severed head high. "Your Majesty, I am grateful to have fulfilled your command without bringing you shame." That day, the entire capital was in an uproar. The common folk cheered my name, lavishing me with flowers and applause. I stood atop the city tower, gazing down at the excited faces below. I tell the whole world. Women, too, can be granted marquisates and generalships, and guard their homeland. I don't need to marry anyone to prove my worth. I am a powerhouse in my own right. My legend has only just begun.